So, 10 years ago this year, someone very close to me passed away right before Easter. And so I'm going to read a poem about her called Unrequited Easter. She knew it wasn't going to come, like the package or the angel, the iced hibiscus tea the waitress forgot, the reply from the guy who taught her how to whistle real loud in the asylum. It would not come, not from that white timeout. She only remembered who saw what tears fall. She charted its migrations, carved out its lines on the Coltrane album like gunpowder fuses, tattooed ellipsoids on her fingers in grease. She collected the materials, sewing box, swapped paperbacks, razor burn cream, rose water, a chicken in the freezer, friends. Meanwhile, our red letter days marching off the summit of some Calvary, our red letter days candied with lipstick and breakfast, each blood-jeweled match tip burned away. By the morning when they read her girlhood Easter prayer, she steeped in the rained-on grasses. She was closed in her white dress. She was closed in the regal crypt. In her own time or out of her own loop, she knew the hoax of so-called peace, the flaws of her good old boy father who'd punched a hole in her strength's wall when he learned about the drugs, who'd spend his fortune now on lacquered benches and plaques at the college in her honor. She knew who he was. She'd been holding out for his Jesus, who rose from the dead only to leave us again. She weighed it out, a sigh in the stifle, while the sun backed off into another dark corner, and what skies or waves were left for her grew warmer. She knew. Do we have any Twin Peaks fans in the audience? I have a poem about it. That sounds like maybe stupid, but it's not. Self-fulfilling elegy for Laura Palmer. My innocence, like all innocence, never had a chance. At 13, my psyche snagged on Laura Palmer. Laura, the corpse afloat in the remote creek, the funeral pyre whose fire was invisible. Laura, everyone's plummeting beloved. Laura, the angel who was no angel. My adolescent obsession for the negligee, the cocaine, the father. Laura dragged through the woods. I'd never encountered depth before the wild abysses of those woods. But secrets I understood. I've been told at the foot of the bed, don't tell or I'll kill you. I, 13, and inconsequential, the virgin who was no virgin. What to make of Laura in my dreams' harpsichord of torture or pleasure? She was fame, she was sex appeal, she went to school, she wore pink. They tied back her arms, kink, 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 sin and its rituals. I, 13, owning nothing, symbolizing nothing, but hers were the hieroglyphs, the cryptic dictations from space. Hers was the letter R, hers the black mass that was red. For her they closed the sawmill and beat their waitress wives. For her they cried and cried. They were all beautiful and terrified. I can trace so much back to Laura. Hard drugs leave bloody footprints all over my art. Violence trails my sex like a police car. Mystery seduces my memory, and I dream. Someone save me from that neon lightning. I dream of blonde hair falling like grief. I dream the boy I flirted with got away with murder. Help me. The moon's a white van driving off without me. I stared too long at the TV. Someone's smearing blood all over my photograph. Someone's calling my name from behind the waterfall. Okay. This next one is dedicated to the poet Jack Gilbert. It's called Gods That Preferred the World. Cloaked Odin, the vagabond, Brynhild, fire enciphered, Christ assigned to the impossible womb, Christ suffering through sadistic puberty, Zeus to shag, Bacchus to shag inebriated multitudes, Aphrodite to shag, Athena for blood, but they always go back, levitate cross-shaped into the blinding clouds, while the trembling crowd admires their courage. A crowd of us, we who were never enough for them, with our cracked concrete mattress fires, fanged traps for our animals' meals that snap. They turn their tails and return to their respective heavens. They know now how the sun can look like utter nothingness, the shadows like scraps of excrement, and the weak like a whip. Though the gods' white thoughts pierce the night as stars, they know that under the fog, through the excess of antithetical earthlight, their art is often invisible, and slaughter ordinary, blood abundant yet rarely sacrificial. The gods go home. The honeymoon ends in the grayest airport imaginable, with a flight through an overcast day. Just the way the man I dream of so erotically in daylight seems, he'd not brush even my scaly elbow. Not at all. No, not at all the Priapic animal that would covet his neighbor's wife all night with unrestrained desire. Mortal life is not so exciting. And this is how I know that only those who love with the pure hilarity of idiots, buffoons, holy fools, or gods that absurdly preferred the world will be saved. Once I craved the world and clumsily, violently got it. Now I crave red skies, cathedral ceilings, orgasms, runes, Reiki, any semblance of divinity. But my lovers turned enemies will not be reconstituted on some plane. The Elysian fields I tread is a street running riverwise under the unrisen stars. Brynhild was the only one who stayed, endured, until she flung her flailing entirety onto Sigmund's blazing pyre. She loved her lover. She wanted death. I don't think she wanted paradise. End of the bender. Awakened after prayers for sleep, in this scene something happens. My heart becomes a heart. I'll admit I was indebted to some god for getting spring to kick the door in, the only thing that would rouse me, dumb and fluttering from the pieta of his arms, in his wooden room that stupefied me. My eyes felt like how fists feel in dreams. And yes, immediately I spun or flung like a seed of light into the black hole of that caring expression, of that body I liked. And even though all night I wished the wind would cleave me into fragments, I received the spring breeze, its green hammers poised to pry the windows open just so, like margins of clarity, the oak leaves chanting their ohms all through the house, up to the beams in their dust nets. I didn't care so much for the ceiling, but the floor I wanted to lick, like a dog licks a wound, over and over, but not to clean it, and not because it was clean. It wasn't. I know the reason, but can't find the words. Now the spine curves back. Forgive me. So, A year ago tomorrow, I had a baby, and this is a poem about that wonderful day, and it's called First Breath. Deep in the holy room obscura, the attentive cult gathers round their bleeding statue. My knees are twin steeples over the sanctum of my sex. These 9 months I've been too afraid to pray, as if it would wet the lips of some bloodthirsty god. Now the true miracle of the flesh demands glory bees and Marian apparitions at the 40th sleepless hour. Soon, soon, the avalanche of humors and the heart sewing shut its amniodam for the first breath, shrill cry, my child. He is a bird from the yoke. He is green and vermilion, weighing nothing from the tumult out of his own bloody force field. He is omniscient as any speechless thing, long invisible. And I am confused with a bitter hatred for everything outside the limits of him. And then serene, as the idiot singing bluegrass on the asylum lawn, my song, we are two and barbarically beautiful. This is the newest thing I have tonight. I've been working for a few years on this series of poems about men. And this is the most recent addition to it, Marilyn Monroe. Marilyn Monroe. Marilyn Monroe opened her mouth and faux fur grew on the backs of stand-up basses. The cinema was dark and anything could happen. The cinema was the dark inside of her mouth, hard seats, her teeth, and Marilyn Monroe danced on the carpet of her own tongue. Men put her eyes in the holes of letter O's. Men put her thighs in highfalutin prose. Men bent her over, done her wrong. Men caressed what was dead in her, and what was dead in her, men pressed into the wet pavement of American memory. Male American memory that baptized me and my sisters in that same river of ejaculate like Coleridge's mighty fountain in the name of Marilyn Monroe. I admit that I have taken inspiration from the phallus. Just look at the French bread I wield like a sword, and statistically I certainly skew one way, spoiling the rod, one might say. Tragedy, I have let its perfume dry on my wrists. I can feel men rattling their gates of flesh all over town, and the smell of rot washes over the souls of beautiful women, one and all, real and unreal. Marilyn Monroe, Dolores Hayes, my mother. And I've thought of how the surgeons broke her jaw, then her nose, and put her in the window, opened her puppy eyes. If the window was the screen, men were all chiming children and wanted to fuck her the way you pet a darling dog, and she'd sleep on their floors and eat of their table scraps till she believed it. Then and only then would they have let her live. That's all I have.
Well, it's Hart's birthday tomorrow, and I thought I'd start off with one by Hart Crane. A little hard for me to see on, so let's see. Chaplin-esque. We make our meek adjustments, contented with such random consolations as the wind deposits and slithered into ample pockets. For we can still love the world who find a famished kitten on the step and know recesses for it from the fury of the street. or warm, torn elbow coverts. We will sidestep into the final smirk, dally the doom of that inevitable thumb that slowly chafes its puckered index toward us, facing the dull squint with what innocence and what surprise. And yet these fine collapses are not lies more than the pirouette of any pliant cane. Our obsequies are, in a way, no enterprise. We can evade you in all else but the heart. What blame to us if the heart live on? The game enforces smirks, but we have seen the moon in lonely alleys make a grail of laughter of an empty ash can. And through all sound of gaiety and quest, have heard a kitten in the wilderness. All right. This is Obad. I awaken and then I wait on my dreams to evaporate. After a vapid wank, I arise and wipe the cum from my stomach, the gown from around my eyes. I'm pretty okay the first cigarette, the first couple cups of coffee of the day, but from there it's a bitch. All I can do is fall to my knees and still in my t-shirt sleeves pray for that mercy in which I hardly believe. All right, this next one is ekphrastic, huh? Kandinsky's Untitled number 629 with a shout out to homeless Navy vet Scott Lee. Let A not equal A, and given that the dame whose name I don't deign to recall, no, not at all, is the subtext of this text, just as death is the subtext of all life, it follows that rather than kowtow to any upstart joyriding question mark and the spiteful kite fights of Good Friday, the horizon done called in sick with a chartreuse hangover. And if and only if a heart heavier far than an ibis feather belies a Buster Keaton-esque Googleplex of operatic bric-a-brac, then and only then is the feasibility of falling the fuck apart in a manner at once transcendental and derby hat demonstrated. QED, baby. All right, this one here, it's Worcester, sure enough, and I went to the same high school as old Frank O'Hara, and this is, well, you'll see, the day Etta died. That's Etta James, huh? It's late January, Congo Square, and about 80 muggy degrees out. And just as global warming explains this long Indian summer, for your gorgeous voice, we've got an ecology of heartache to thank. On identity's fluidity, alcoholics and drug addicts all agree. And in my stupor of grief, I recall my homeboy Frank O'Hara's obit billet-doux to Billie Holiday. And how if psyche means butterfly, and this dispossessed monarch's indeed your soul, then this egret can only be Johnny Otis, the great band leader who brought you a teen runaway to the world's notice. and then eager to play psychopomp and lead you through the pearly gates, predeceased you by a day or two. It was at Jazz Fest here in town that I first saw you, dear Etta, throw down. And when I say that I cried, I mean something like the time I got maced by a fed-up soulmate with the same damn can of mace I'd bought her myself. What I mean, Etta dear, is that I shed non-stop and ugly-faced tears. All right, this one's to Walt Whitman. Izzy Bongo is a Zulu praise poem, although they needn't really be praiseworthy things, just noteworthy. Walt Whitman, Izzy Bongo. Walt Whitman, he who supped with the queen and then dumpster dove for dessert. Walt Whitman, irrepressible one who did hard time for humping live oaks. Walt Whitman, he who slept with both eyes open for fear he'd miss something. He who knew the business end of a horse's bridle and a bridal party. He who filled his autograph book with names you never heard of. Walt Whitman, he whose picture still smiles on the cover of my hardback Leaves of Grass after I inadvertently shellacked it with lawnmower grass. Walt Whitman, he whose teeth the kids are skipping on the river, whose hair is the volcano's capillary lava, whose nose is the sundial's gnomon, whose nose grease lubricates the gears of every timepiece, whose neck is the neck of an electric guitar, whose words burst ink pens like temple veins, whose beard stuffs the seat cushions of convertibles. He who procreated in the back of his ambulance, he who barroom brawled just to see the joy run red. Walt Whitman, damner of torpedoes, tickler of hell's bells, he of the Cracker Barrel cosmology. Walt Whitman. Walt Whitman, hirsute patron of the whorehouse who sat the girls on his lap and asked them what they wanted for Christmas. Walt Whitman, himself the giver of geological blowjobs. He who sat up front and talked the bus driver's ear off. He who emulated the holy dung beetle. Walt Whitman, who some critics claim wrote only one poem, who I say wrote only one letter. Oh, thank you guys.
I want to begin by acknowledging the ongoing and relentless horror that's happening in Gaza right now, and to read a poem by my friend and Palestinian poet Tariq Luthouni. We already know this. There is more to us than what was taken from us. A place to call home, land of olive trees and their branches, Palestine. There, I've said it. I want to be sure everyone knows where my parents hail from. Each of us needs a place to return to. Genocide, I would hope everyone knows, did not start and did not end at the Holocaust. I haven't forgotten that everyone needs a place on this planet, and I prefer to live where I can leave the doors unlocked, or live without the doors, or hell. I don't even care for walls, but I do care for the blues, water, the sadness that comes when it is not within sight. I don't know if there is a child anywhere on this earth that wasn't, at least once, held by their mother. Water, where my mother held me until I was given to land. Oh, firm land, how my Father holds me. People keep calling for blood to dress you in it. I don't think any of them know truly how much of it the body can take, how much the body can lose. So I'm going to read a couple of poems from my book and then a few new ones. This first poem gets its title from the Catholic church that I attended as a child. Saint Rose of Lima. Lips weary with chapped hallelujahs, you went to church and learned the power of patience. You used to sit in the pew and wonder how long it would take before your tears would turn to blood. How many prayers you must memorize to be worthy of that kind of miracle. Stained glass windows glowed, multicolored portraits of a woman in prayer. Rose was your patron saint. While writing this poem, you discover she's the protector of florists, embroiderers, and people ridiculed or misunderstood for their piety. Your brother's laughter rings out from across the kitchen table all these years later. No one ever asked why your hair was falling out. While you pretended not to notice the bald spot on your scalp, you collected the strands of hair and fashioned them into crosses. In school, you learned Lima is a city in South America, but all you could think about was her forehead wrapped with spikes, her waist weighed down by an iron chain. She made her bed with broken glass and stone. The thought of her locking the door and burning her hands burned like a looping film on the inside of your eyelids. You knelt at the cross and kept your hands in your pockets, pricking your thumb against the thorn you found in the garden. For years, you slept on the floor of your little sister's bedroom, afraid to talk to the darkness alone. You asked God for a new mattress. Nightmares shattered you like mirrors. You turned the lights off and on and off and on and off and on. Isn't this the cost of being alive? You challenge yourself. You rock yourself to sleep. This next poem gets its title from an article that appeared in The Guardian maybe like 10 to 12 years ago. And it was about a research study where they studied brain systems, I guess, basically, for people that in utero hear one language, but then once but that's different from the language in which they're raised. And as an adoptee, I was in utero in Korea, but then was raised in the United States, so I have no knowledge of Korean language in my conscious mind. But basically what this study revealed was if I were to hear Korean, it would ping these places in my brain that I have no access to, which I thought was really interesting and also a cause for grief. Lost first languages leave permanent mark on the brain, new study reveals. To experience the world muffled through the wall of skin is like wearing earmuffs while deep-sea diving. Cacophony of whale song and sunken earthquakes, tonal pitches seep in. How do I translate the sound of my mother's moaning? It's a soft wail I hang on the wall of my windpipe. They say the circulatory system is the first to develop in an embryo, that the body generates cells to divide and multiply, to form a swelling ball, that your blood weaved and whirled to become my blood. Who was the first you told? At week 11, fingernails begin to appear. I bet you didn't know that nails are made of dead blood cells, how something could grow inside you that's both alive and dead. Once I learned how to talk, I did not stop. I drew blood and licked my teeth with language, English spilling down my chin. Later, I learned how words can wound without touching, and I tucked myself in a bed of silence. Okay, I'm gonna read something wildly new. I wrote this week. Philip Williams tweeted a prompt, and it was, write a poem that's a how-to guide on loving you. So this is my attempt at a love poem. How to love me. I watch as you prune brown leaves from the pothos and water the soil when it's dry. Otherwise, you mostly leave it alone as the stalk stretches up toward the light, vines cascading to the floor. Love me with the slowness and focus of a gardener at work. Tend to my bruised fronds while making space for new growth. Love me with the quiet hope for a flowering future, our home flushed with philodendrons bathing in the light. Love me loud and reckless as a blooming cactus, the wildness of pink blossom amid the barb of thorn. Most of all, love me like roots in the rhizosphere. Find me in the buzzing dark, my tendrils' woody edges reaching for yours. I also had a baby recently. He's gonna be 2 actually this month, and seems to be the only thing I can write about now. So I'm gonna read a couple of poems. I had a long birth. I was in labor for almost 3 days.
Oh, good.
And my doula Rhea is here. She was there for a big part of it and is in this poem. So this is a puzzle that I wrote about the second day. Water. I'm in the birth pool in your room, my cheek resting against a blue inflatable wall, my body swollen with water. You are swimming with my amniotic fluid. Outside, the sky spits rain while I rage in the water. It is the end of the second day. Rhea touches my face. She holds a straw up to my lips to take a sip of water. She places a cool wet cloth on my forehead as I grind my teeth, my face speckled with beads of water. Gentle reminders to breathe. It's been over 24 hours and it still hasn't ruptured my bag of waters. Ross plays River by Leon Bridges, and I try to manifest a wave pouring out of me in a gush of blood and water. Through the window, I count clouds, pink billowing masses of air and water. I can almost feel you scratching at the walls from the inside. I tell you come, pleading, soon. Together, we roar in the water. This is my last one. I think the thing about being a parent is, for me, that I'm learning is that it's simultaneously beautiful and terrifying.
Amen.
Meanwhile, I want to look at the world the way my son looks at his hands, bright and full of wonder. How he finds every piece of fluff tucked under the carpet corners and each dirty coin fallen from a pocket before bringing it directly to his mouth. I watch him test the limits of his body, balancing first on belly, then dragging on forearms, before lifting to hands and knees. Oh, movement, the first sweet taste of autonomy. As he lifts his arms upward, steadies and straightens his legs, Thick trunks of the softest tree, he screeches in delight, pure triumph glowing in his cheeks. Meanwhile, a ballroom in Monterey Park, a farm in Half Moon Bay, a movie theater in Aurora, a music festival in Las Vegas, a parade in Kansas City, a holiday party in San Bernardino, a high school in Oxford, a high school in Parkland, an elementary school in Uvalde, a first grade classroom in Sandy Hook, a Walmart in El Paso, a Lewiston bowling alley, an Orlando nightclub, a Charleston church, an Atlanta spa, Mother's Day in New Orleans, a Sunday afternoon. I used to ride my bicycle without a helmet, drink carelessly with strangers, go to the movies alone, and forget myself in the dark. Today, as I sway on the porch swing with June, I'm both astonished and afraid. Thank you.
Before I actually start my poetry, I hope y'all can hear me well.
Yep.
I wanted to make mention of jazz poet and blues scholar John Sinclair, who transitioned yesterday at 82 years old. He was born in 1941. In 2009, my son and I took my mother out for her birthday at the Praline Connection in the French Quarter. We get done with dinner, dessert, all of that. We go outside, and across the street in the now no longer existing Cafe Brazil was John Sinclair. I brought my mom in there. It was one of the best birthdays she's ever had. She loved it. And John, you know, he talked to her and everything. John was a great poet. And I just wanted to mention that.
White Buffalo Day. He did a big poem about that back years ago.
Trying to throw me off my game. I see that.
Jared's a big believer in White Buffalo.
Well, these glasses are now required. I don't like it, but I have to live with it. This is apology. I gotta get adjusted. I never meant to be a poet, never meant to put these words here to say something, to expound, to explain, never meant to revolutionize your thinking, make you question your convictions, make you look again at that truth you know so well to tell in your sleep. Never meant to open your sleeping eyes, make you see it just happened, see I. Never meant to be a poet. That was my mother. Birthed a girl child, blue, damn near dead baby. Prayed I'd live long enough to write. Gave me this poet's name. I never claimed poetry. Never meant to be a poet. The poetry claimed me. It is determined to live, doesn't care who it uses to survive as long as it remains alive. See, I never meant to be a poet. It's the poetry that's meant to be. It's only using me to get to you. Okay, somebody was having some little fun times over there, so I brought some fun poems. Kinda. Now this poem is called the Fruit Poem. And I've had a lot of trouble with it, so I put a caution sign on it. This poem is only about fruit. Where your mind goes when you hear it, I am not responsible. The fruity sumptuousness of her fresh-washed body gobbled up the air in their room, tantalized him until his nostrils flared wantonly. He instinctively inhaled long, deep breaths of her. Set so right, his synapses popped like firecrackers, and he was delirious with the mere thought of it. This fruit, this feast, all his. How could he but devour with peace by luscious peace? Ice cold pomegranates, seeds pressed hard against the hot roof of his mouth. Sucked until they were naked, their flesh disintegrated and melting in his throat. Cool cantaloupe waters, sheared from the rind with his teeth. Melon meat, just firm enough not to be swallowed whole, just tender enough to be eaten in a few quick bites. His tongue lapping minuscule traces of escaping juice from lips swollen with the pleasure of it all. Slightly chilled peaches, their fuzzy edges tickling his mustache as he nibbled round and round until all that remained was the seed. Even the nectar he greedily licked from his sticky fingers. Sun-warmed orange slices that filled his mouth, pulp pulled from the skin and bitten all in one fluid motion, exploded, flooding his tongue, turning his body into a wave of dripping sigh. How does he explain? Compare. Tantalus, oh Tantalus, he exclaimed for you who never knew. Such exceeding torture as this is bliss. And of course, with some fruit, you really got to have chocolate, so let's have some of that. It's called chocolate drops and marshmallow cream. True story. I'm sorry, I'm laughing at my own self. She called it a chocolate pool of men, and we laughed as we melted into the teeming crowd. Poets, we said, are strange critters, always thinking in those weird phrases, always tuned into the sights and sounds of things, at least almost always, because being always tuned in makes us more crazy and less poets. A chocolate pool it was, though. Everything from ebony statue to a blueberry chips to milk chocolate miniatures filled with marshmallow cream covered in honey. Caramel coated white chocolate drops, hints of raspberry at their bubblegum centers. Dark chocolate bits whipped into confectioner's sugar flavored with lemon. Legs, lips, fingertips, flexed, wet, and manicured. A woman can't live off chocolate alone. So when you bury me, let my epitaph read, she got toothless and happy. I wrote this poem for fun for one of my friends who was messing with me when I had bronchitis. But then I decided I liked it, so I worked it out a little more. It's called Diary Notes. February 29th. 4 or something in the morning. I don't know. Maybe 4:15. In a place where the edges of nightlights melt together in divided hallways. Somewhere in between the day and the night, the dark and the light. Lightning indiscriminately shatters the darkness. One window flashes and disappears, and then another flashes and disappears. And in between, the thunder roars, the raindrops fall. Burglar bars, motion sensors, and deadbolt locks do nothing to protect me from this demon. Windows flash and disappear. Memories flash and disappear. Windows flash. Memories consume the night, consume my dreams, consume my sleep. I'm here in the darkness, here in the void. My life empty, my heart cold. I know it is only temporary, One of those mood things. But mood things last a long time for me. For I am too cold inside, too close to the surface of my own fears, too near the edge of my own insanity. Lightning indiscriminately breaks the darkness. One window flashes and disappears. Another window flashes and disappears. The thunder roars, screaming, screaming, a demon in the night. And raindrops fall. Millions and millions and millions of raindrops fall. Like memories flashing. Windows flashing. Raindrops falling. Tears falling. Thunder roaring. A heart breaking in the night. Well, with joy comes sorrow, and this one is a two-edged sword. These are two different poems. This one is called Baby Brother. I say he is my baby brother, though he is taller than me. Not by much, mind you, but taller and broader and older sometimes than I'll ever be. He's lived on the dark side. Welfare, no job, too many mouths to feed. Some not even his, but claimed. He took the cow and her calves. He's endured the harsh slap of the long arm of the law. Felt the icy sting of steel bars, savored the bitter taste of poverty, hate, injustice, greed. Baby brother. Blood of my blood. My mighty male protector, man of the tender heart. A smile so engaging he could, as they say, charm the skin off a snake. A laugh so true, it starts deep in his heart and rises up gently to settle in the back of his throat, then slowly rolls off his tongue. A child so sweet, you want to bottle that kindness and sell it in the finest stores. But who could afford it? Baby brother. He'll always be that. It doesn't matter how tall he is, how broad he is, how old he is. He'll always be baby brother to me. This one was written in November '94, and this one was written in August '95. And actually, I had a reading at the Maple Leaf and entirely lost it that day. It's called Morning Misery, Midnight Morning. As I walked back to my car, I studied the sky, trying to determine what color I would call it when I recalled this morning. The sleeping blue of daybreaking, the hushed blue of unawakened earth, the eternal blue of the morning I said goodbye to my baby brother. It was just before 6 a.m. then. The blue-black of the coroner's van was barely visible as it pulled into the street. When our mother had called at 4:40 a.m., it was already too late. But I went anyway. Looked at those long lashes. The tube in his mouth touched his shoulder. His hair wished for my prayer book. Talked to a doctor whose eyes were as indescribably blue as the morning. Deep, dark, dark blue, like I'd never seen in all my life. Thought of the last suit I'd seen my brother wear. Blue. that dusky slate blue that always seemed to make his eyes glow. Later, I stood on his front porch, absorbing the early morning heat of a sun I had not seen rise. Heard the silence, and then the sudden songs of birds. It was a sound he would never hear again. The last sound he heard, I suppose, was the deafening crack of the pistol that had left one bullet in his head and another in his chest. Or was it the squeal of tires from the car that had left him dying on the emergency ramp of the hospital? Or was it the faint rustle of doctors and nurses struggling to keep him alive? I don't know. All I know is that here, this indigo midnight, the last sound I hear is a thunderous crash of the pieces of my heart falling on my pillow. So that was hard, but we're gonna close out with something a little lighter. See if I can remember it. My soul has gone deep like the rivers, he said. Euphrates, Congo, Nile, Mississippi. I close my eyes, repeat the words over and over and over again. I know these waters. My spirit has lingered in these waters. My soul understands. Even though the only river I've ever known is the muddy Mississippi. I love my first love there. And remember the world pausing in the sweet joy of it. Sharing my secret dreams with a friend as we sat on the jagged rocks of its banks. Cried my life sorrow on its shoulders as the sun rose and danced on tugboat waves. Got lost in the saxophone solos and guitar strings of sidewalk musicians at twilight. The muddy Mississippi. Its bittersweet remembrances will linger in my soul for all eternity. And my soul, too, will grow deep like the rivers. Thank you.